One. Okay. JT from the future, hello. So before we started even recording this episode, I saw some new alliances being built between the North and South and Central America when it comes to living in your pajamas all the time. I think even though Hakeem is a comfy boy, as we call him, I don't think he will agree with this disgusting American ideology.
No.
Pajamas being worn outside. You guys are fucking animals. That is not okay. Have some self-respect.
As a true materialist Hegelian, I'm on the opposite. I sleep on the nude, my friend. So that's why I'm always in my pajamas.
There we go.
Yes.
What he's trying to tell you is that having clothing is ideology.
Exactly. Exactly.
To be a true Marxist is to walk out with your balls out.
On the nude, yeah.
You know, they say the Marxists want to take the clothes off your back. Yes, literally.
Literally,
You will
yes.
not have anything.
No property at all.
We will supply infinite amounts of beaches and infinite amounts of sunscreen, at least for our pale asses.
There you go.
I wouldn't know.
I was waiting. So you're also additionally defended by all the hair. I'm a hairy motherfucker.
Exactly.
I don't know about
There
the
we
other
go,
three
yes.
of you. So that probably will protect me for a bit. JT, you look like your butt is very smooth, like a very smooth guy.
Boy, I tell you what, I don't need to get waxed or nothing. I show up, I'm beautiful and shiny and clean and smooth.
I just want to oil you down. Okay, enough. We have a guest with us.
Our poor guest.
We can't be.
I feel like I need to
this
defend the
motivated.
Americans here also. Like, we're not always in our pajamas. Like, yes, my pajamas are very much
majority of the time.
my work uniform, and yes, if I'm just going to get gas or something, I'll wear like my jogger pajama pants. But I always put on a respectable shirt. That's
Or a hoodie.
I don't, yeah. You know, I don't think I even own a hoodie anymore. It depends on where you go. If you go to Walmart, yeah, probably 60% of people are in their pajamas. But if you go somewhere upscale like Target, maybe only 20% are in their pajamas.
I think the pajama wear and the active wear just took over the American lifestyle landscape, and people they take it the same way they do like recycling or not. They just wear sporty clothes and sportswear and pajamas to feel that they rest and to feel that they work out, but they never actually do, you know? So you see, consumption does all the work, so they don't have to do it.
That's a good point. That's a
very good
big brain take, yeah.
Because I had a weird period where, like, you know, I wear formal clothing, but I wear casual clothing as well. If you would need to define a particular style that I follow, you would not be able to, because depending on my fucking mood swings, I'm either, you know, going to a fucking war dressed up all military like, or I'm a fucking corporate sellout, or I'm literally cute little Christmas boy all the fucking time. But I had this weird period. I remember I was 16 or 17, and I watched this weird back in the you know, period of, you know, anti-SJW shit. This guy was not necessarily an anti-SJW, but he was like, how to be a real man. And accidentally it pops up on my feed, and he tells me, if you are over 20, and I wasn't over 20. He was like, if you are over 20 and you wear a shirt that doesn't have a collar, you're basically a fucking child. So I was like, how do I appear like I'm older in front of all the ladies, you know? I pop a fucking collar. But where I grew up in the middle of the fucking Balkans, with where, you know, the sex appeal of the boys was defined based on how new and sleek your tracksuit was, I just looked like a massive nerd walking around in polo shirts all the fucking time. So that period lasted max a week. But it's crazy how it can get stuck in your brain. And to this day, I rarely buy t-shirts, because no matter how much I don't believe it, somewhere in the back of my mind, when I look at a t-shirt, I'm like, man, I'm not fucking 16. I need to buy old people clothes, I guess. So
there are perfectly respectable t-shirts out there. Like if you get like a nice thicker material and it doesn't have like stick figures saying ironic things on it, yeah, it's a perfectly acceptable t-shirt. Like solid colors, very useful. Makes a good wardrobe out of nice solid color tees.
No, the thing is that like it's strange for me. Like it's a very interesting cultural shock, because I mean I feel like I'm the older guy here. I'm 40. I don't know how old you guys are. So the thing is that I went through my corporate phase. Like I used to be a corporate sellout for a very long time, and I was forced to use like casual and even suits sometime to go to meetings and presentations. And I feel like those clothes are the cosplay, like that's
Yep.
that's power, like power attitude, businessman cosplay. But outside of that, like colors and the reason why we invented ties to begin with, like the material reason for ties to exist was to hold the neck of shirts before we had the technology to actually make a proper cut at the end of our neck, to hold the fabric together. But then after that, it became purely aesthetic. But of course, then it becomes purely ideological. And then of course, as we have to politicize aesthetics, ties and colors became a cosplay, a cosplay symbol for the business world. So like I think without all these like big take on why there's a logic behind this fashion, what I did is that when I quit the corporate world to do my own thing, is that I completely rebelled against the cosplay, and then I started going to meetings in white t-shirts and jeans, and that's all I own. Like you will go through my wardrobe and everything is like black and white jeans and sneakers, and that's it. I don't know anything else.
But when you go even deeper down the rabbit hole, doesn't it become cosplaying and being anti-corporate by wearing the opposite of what they're wearing?
Like
right?
Steve Jobs, right? Cosplaying turtlenecks.
Yeah. But the point that I always try to make, I guess, and it completely does not go against what you just said, is that socialists that grew up in a struggling environment, which I completely understand where they're coming from, tend to define many just social and cultural, and in this case, like even aesthetic or fashion happenings or trends or whatever as necessarily bourgeois. So you would hear people say, classical music is bourgeois, or, the suit as a concept is bourgeois. Yes, under the context of capitalism, it could be defined as such. But if we keep giving all that shit to the so-called bourgeois, then everybody who likes that sort of stuff will immediately just, like, I'm talking about normal people here, very, very normal people. They'll just be freaked out by what the fuck these socialists are talking about. Like,
absolutely,
they hate the fact that they listen to heavy metal. What the fuck? Then I obviously will not even hear out there any sort of ideological standpoint that might be coming from their side. But obviously, this is a niche problem. It's not like, it's mostly a fucking Twitter thing. Let's be fucking honest. Or when you're at a party meeting and some guy walks in with a fancy branded fucking bag or hoodie, and then some of your other comrades after that, when you go grab beers, start talking shit, and you're like, what the fuck, man? You're about to make a split up because the guy likes a particular brand. But yeah, it's a niche thing. I'm not trying to build it up into something too big, but
absolutely.
But still, we shouldn't just give stuff to the other side for free. This is yours, and this is yours.
My only ideology is being cozy. Anything else is stupid bourgeois decadence. You're all nerds. I don't know what this Marxism stuff is you're talking about. I just want to be cozy, man.
It's not that you just want to grill. You just want to be cozy.
I just want to be cozy, yeah. Oh. Uphold Marxism, Bidenism, cozyism.
Unfortunately, under Bidenism, the kids cannot be cozy.
Oh my God!
Oh. Oof! Oh.
Was that too much?
Brown or otherwise, but
well, we can't all have it.
I was gonna say, I wonder how much of America's GDP goes to keep Biden running at this point.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'd love to see the mix, the cocktail that he's on that they inject him with.
My God!
Horse tranquilizer before he gets on stage.
It's just a big old syringe, a third world syringe.
I think
fucking 12 French.
I think we developed the science to keep the queen alive for so long, so they probably know how to do it.
Yeah, they perfected it.
Yeah, they perfected it. They know.
But there must have been like Americans have the patent for keeping like old decrepit politicians alive, but when Joe came into power, that's how we got the queen killed, because he's a proper Irish laddie and he did not want to send any new vaccines for longevity of life over to the queen. So, good job,
IRA Joe.
IRA Joe. Yeah? So, welcome to yet another episode of the Deprogram. Today we have a very exciting episode for you guys. Living up to the truly international nature of our show, we try to get guests from as many corners of the world as possible, and boy, do we have a treat for you. Born and bred in Brazil, but living in Mexico, our current guest, Diego Ruzzarin, has a career so long and wide that it would take days to list out. But put very modestly, he is one of the biggest Marxist content creators from Latin America, with audiences in the hundreds of thousands and millions on many different platforms. An impressive orator, philosopher, quite the good-looking hunk, if I may say so myself. So, as we said previously, I wish that this wasn't audio only for that reason. And most importantly, obviously, a comrade. So, welcome again, Diego. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. Let's start with, I guess, a personal question/story. Tell us a bit about your journey as a Marxist propagandist. It's so scary. I love it. Or as the kids nowadays call it, a content creator.
A bread tuber. No, come on.
Oh, no!
No, don't, no, never. Absolutely not.
Yeah, I'm joking.
I think being called a liberal is possibly a better.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. No, I'm
joking,
of course, I'm joking as well, guys. So
two sides of the same coin that should be thrown in the cockpit.
So
neat joke for you opening. Sorry, go on.
No, please. So first of all, thank you so much for the invitation. It's a pleasure for me to be here. Like everybody know, I've been recommending your channels for a very long time since I begin with.
Hey.
I think I even done some live reaction to some of your videos on my preview channels and even on Twitch. I'm a huge fan. This is an honor for me to be here. So I don't take this for granted at all. I'm really glad and appreciate the opportunity. Having said that, I think my background as a Marxist it's rather recent, to be honest, because I'm a designer by formation. After that, I have a master's degree in experience design. So I was still pretty much as a corporate sellout until my early 30s. But then something happened in my life that was a game changer, like a literal game changer. I'm married, I'm very happily married to a Mexican woman called Alejandra. And we had our first son. He was born in Brazil. At that time, I was working. I was actually funding my first company in Brazil. And our first son, at the age of 2, he was diagnosed originally with autism. And the fact that he was diagnosed with autism, and the fact that my wife is a Lacanian psychoanalyst, made us very curious and got us into some research. And of course, autism is not really a diagnosis. It's more like a description of a behavioral pattern, but it doesn't necessarily explain the causes for that behavior pattern. And me and my wife, we took different paths in order to understand this new life context that was given to us. And the fact that you are a father and a mother, it really signifies you as responsible for this creature that is now completely in your hands. And my wife changed and complemented her expertise in Lacanian psychoanalysis with biogenetics. So she got into medicine, hard medicine, even eugenetics, and understanding how we relate and how we are grown and how we are brought into the world. And she got really into how we are, what we eat, and how we relate to nature and to food. From my side, I got more interested into politics and economy. So I started reading like a madman. I started reading into several studies regarding capacism, so the way we judge people based on their capacities. And during my readings in capacism, of course, I came across a lot of several different grotesque injustices that are systematic around the world. And most of the time, out of coincidence, and then as I discovered late after that, not a coincidence at all, most of these disparities, injustices, and grotesque characteristics of our lifestyle are due to our socioeconomic model. And this, of course, led me into several great writers, great thinkers, and it led me into Marx. Because of Marx, I got super interested in philosophy, and I couldn't stop there. So I had to do my work. I read whatever Marx was inspired from. I even it was a coincidence, but my favorite sentence in philosophy, it was actually cited as the favorite sentence from Marx in philosophy as well, which is from a pre-Socratic philosopher, which is I am human and nothing that is human is foreign to me. And this notion, this very basic notion that we have to change our perception of our relationships and find structure and properly argumentative manners of understanding our reality led me to read Hegel, and then even go back from Hegel to Spinoza, and then I took like a reverse path all the way back to the origins of philosophy. And I'm currently studying my post-degree, PhDs, like postdoctoral studies in critical theory, which is now my current field of study. I've been over postmodernism. I read pretty much all of the postmoderns, like the main ones, the most important ones. I'm currently reading about meta-modernism. But if I would add some titles to my own description, even if I do consider myself a Marxist in most regards, I tend to struggle with the dialectical relationship from ideas back to the change into material conditions. And I tend to describe myself more as a neo-Spinozist, not becoming completely a vulgar materialist, but understanding the notion that ideological superstructures are symptomatic, but are mainly a secondary cause of material conditions. And in the end, history is determined and over-determined, I will say, by material conditions first and foremost.
Very interesting. And when it comes to your YouTube channel, your Twitch, your Facebook and Instagram, choosing to use this platform to spread your ideas, how did you get inspired to do that in particular? Did you have those platforms before, so you chose to convert them? Something similar to what JT, for example, has done, or you started it up from the beginning, which is interesting.
No, it's actually it happened after, because my brother is also a philosopher. He's currently studying ethics of artificial intelligence in King's College in London. And at the beginning, we used to have like a very small podcast between me and him called Rosarin Bros, where we spoke about philosophy. And it was just me and him ranting and having some friends over, but having like minuscule discussions with 100, 200 people watching us. It was mainly for fun, to be honest with you. But then something very unique happened to me in the society of spectacle, as Baudrillard would put it. I was invited almost by mistake to a debate here in Mexico, and the debate was organized by one of those. I'm pretty sure you're familiar with the type of figure. It's one of those motivational speakers, finance gurus. The guy had millions of followers. He was like a huge media celebrity in Mexico, and I think somebody from his team fucked him over in the sense that and I swear to God, even the guy that organized the debate was fired after, and we found out that he wanted to fuck his boss over. So the guy organized a debate between me and his boss. And of course,
that's amazing.
The guy
was incredible.
He got destroyed. But I mean, I never intended to. Like I tend to think of myself as a quite nice guy, respectful, I'm easygoing, I'm not too vulgar or offensive or not. But during the debate, the other guy started like attacking me and being really like violent, and I started defending myself. And of course, my defenses were actually pretty rational and well structured. The guy got totally wrecked, and I mean like he lost his business, lost 1 million of followers, had to retire from social media. The president of Mexico.
This is praxis.
Yeah, exactly. This is actual praxis. The government of the president of Mexico mentioned him in a media room, like in a news press, like talking about, because it became like a huge media event in Mexico. I think I got noticed from somebody from YouTube, and I think it was one of the top 10 stories around the world during that year. Wow. And of course, when people got to know me because of that event, they arrived to my channel, and I already had like 100 episodes of my podcast with my brother. So in that year, we became the #1 podcast in Mexico, and it was strange because philosophy was trending, Hegel was trending, Marx was trending. So we got this huge amount of attention, and it has been almost 2 years after that. And I took the opportunity to actually speak about the topics that I'm interested about, which are the ones relating the fact that we should aspire to build a better future for our children. And that implies reading Marx.
That is such an interesting
What a story.
Tell me, guys, if I'm wrong, Kim JT, but he's basically a good guy, Jordan Peterson. No, listen to me, because Jordan Peterson also had like 100 episodes of him just talking to 100 people up on YouTube. He did, but obviously he did a reactionary, very stupid, fucked up thing over in the university. Oh, I don't want to call them a he or a she. Oh, I'm so intelligent. And, that blew up. While
there's a crucial difference. There's one crucial difference. It's that Diego's actually educated in the fields that he's speaking about, right? Peterson's just some dumb fuck. He's a psychologist, I think, by profession, right? Which is fine when you're talking about psychology.
Exactly.
You can't just then rebrand yourself as a fucking philosopher.
No,
all right. Now, again, not to say that you need what's it called, official, quote unquote, official certification in order to. But
just look at Peterson's drip arc that he's gone on.
My God, what happened there? Yeah, that like he's the guy that makes his hood like fucking hates him is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I think it's the benzo withdrawal. I think that's what it is.
Guy,
The colors don't work right.
The colors distract him.
Sometimes it's drippy.
From the grinding of his teeth.
But it's like 1 in 10.
He's built an image of himself as like this stuffy old scholarly type. So pulling a hard rebrand like that, visual rebrand, is going to be pretty jarring for his audience.
And now on the topic of Jordan Peterson, like 2 things I never understood about Peterson. Like first, like how the hell can he misunderstood Nietzsche so much to make Nietzsche like a crypto religious moralist? That's fucking insane. I mean, like Nietzsche would spit on his face. Like he's insane. Like his takes on Nietzsche are ridiculous.
His takes on postmodernism. His takes on.
No. He has no idea. He has no idea.
The discussion he had with Zizek on Marx, in which he went on this entire tirade for an hour and a half, only for him to sit down, and then Zizek asked him, "You speak a lot about these postmodernists. Can you name one? These postmodern neo-Marxists. Please give me some names. Give me some." And he could. By the way, this is the same guy who supposedly is trying to deconstruct Marxism, has spent his entire life basically having rejected Marx. And all this is on the basis of the loosest possible reading. I dare say he probably looked at the Cliff Notes version of just the Communist Manifesto.
Exactly.
Not even something decent, controversial, like the Principles of Communism. The Communist Manifesto, barely fucking read it, and then went and, oh my God.
The guy's so obsessed with us. His entire house is covered with Bolshevik paintings. I don't know if you know that. His entire house. So because he wants to quote him, I think.
Oh God, I was gonna say something.
Reminded. Yeah, but when you go into, I made that joke already on Twitter. It blew up. When we seize Jordan Peterson's house, it's gonna be for
Poor guy.
It's gonna be.
You go think. No, hold on. Bleep this out. But you just said.
Oh my God!
Yeah. I think he is a Russian guy who is openly pro-Stalin and a drug dealer. Apparently, knocked up is his daughter, right? And he lives in a house surrounded by ML paintings everywhere, and he constantly likes to talk about, even when nobody asks him about communism, he wants to talk about it. Like it's some weird, I don't want to call out diseases that he doesn't have, but it looks that it's not. I don't know. There's something fucking off.
No, but the thing is that I think this is a kind of nice segue, because I think the way Jordan Peterson started scapegoating whatever is wrong at the moment in the meta-narrative, especially in the US, but I think as always, like the US sets up the hegemonic conversation topics and then the rest of the world just suck on it like a diarrhea cascade. But I think Jordan Peterson set up the talking points about setting up these neo-Marxists as the enemies. But then, of course, it immediately devolved into communism is the enemy again. And then I think, I don't know how you guys feel it in your different regions in the world, but this is probably one of the main giveaways that Bolsonaro and these reactionaries in Brazil, they have the seed of fascism in whatever they do. Because they have oversimplified in a unified, simple enemy, which is communism. Mm-hmm. This empty scapegoat that is very convenient, that you can hide whatever you want behind it. But I think it started, I don't know if is Jordan Peterson responsible for this. Maybe postmoderns are also kind of responsible for it indirectly. But he made it into a talking point, saying like, oh my God, the ones to blame are the postmodern neo-Marxists. And then, of course, since postmodern neo-Marxists don't exist because it makes no sense, Marxism being a materialistic framework and postmodernism being post-structuralist and denying this opposition between idea and material aspects, it just devolves back into communism, and it's so easy to just recover all those memes and those cheap talking points and strawman arguments just to say that communism is to blame about everything that is wrong and that we don't like.
Beautifully put, which gives us an even better segue, I guess, into the next kind of question that we have prepared here for you. We recently had an interesting kind of look-alike repetition of January 6th in Brazil, literally a couple of days ago. Where,
the tragedy part.
Yeah, exactly. Where Bolsonaro supporters, QAnon freaks, and what I like to call in general the Karen far right did a copy-paste coup attempt over in Rio de Janeiro. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, in Brasilia.
In Brasilia, okay, thank you. But at least as compared to the Yanks, they had a set plan, at least they said they did, which was, for people who don't know, wait for the army to arrive and then have them switch sides and support the protesters against the leftist government while, their boss eats fried chicken over in Florida. He's in the hospital again, by the way. He's fucking impressive. But now, please, Diego, tell us how you saw those unfolding events in front of your eyes.
This is super strange, man. I took a deep dive into that shithole, to be honest with you, and it's a pity because I have a lot of very close family members that got devoured by this narrative and this ideology, and it's sad because as it was shown in recent studies, most of the people that are the most fervent supporters of this reactionary ideology currently taking hold of Brazil are over 40 and mostly men. So it makes sense. I think it's congruent with what we're seeing in other places of the world. But in Brazil, and I will invite the listeners and you guys to take a look at the videos, it's mostly like elderly people, retired people with nothing to do. The traditional reactionary, right? But the thing is that, and I was telling this to Hugo, they're not ready to engage in social media conversation. They were not ready for fake news. They were not ready for WhatsApp viral videos. They were not ready for TikTok and Instagram political influencers sponsored by ideological think tanks. They were not ready for that. I think if we reframe a little bit back to, again, and I love this book, Society of Spectacle from Baudrillard, but even, Manufacturing Consent from Chomsky and Marshall McLuhan, the medium is the message of another medium, and how we relate to media content. I think Brazil was simply overtaken by something that they were not ready for. They were absolutely not ready for. The other thing is that Brazil is very famous for the export of pop operas. Like novelas. Brazilian.
Oh, I grew up on that shit. I literally grew up on that shit.
Can you
Ana
imagine?
Maria de la Salute.
Exactly. Yeah, Tieta and can you imagine like growing up adhering and understanding the world via this meta-narrative structure where you have a simplified version of good guys, bad guys, individualism, meritocracy, like everything is baked in, like all the shitty, stupid, hegemonic, naturalized, ontological perspectives of how the world works is baked into the soap opera, right? And soap opera became the non-agreed upon language of how history works from a Brazilian point of view. So suddenly, these guys retired, mostly with nothing to do with their lives, they're involved into an actual war. And they call it a spiritual war. It's a war for the sake of our children. It's a war between good and evil. It's simplified to the point of ridiculousness. So it's very easy to adhere. And if you want, you can build yourself an echo chamber that is strong enough and hard enough and congruent enough to simply justify whatever reason you take and to overthrow whatever argument is presented at you. So I'm just setting up the scenario because this is not an isolated event. And of course, this is not going away anytime soon. This is probably the most important takeaway from this, which I think is also relevant to the US. I think to begin with, as a political analysis, the reactionary politics on the right that we are seeing in Europe, in Latin America, even in some places in Asia and in the US as well, it's a consequence of the lack of inability of the left to present a proper political project. This is the first thing. And of course, we have been governed in Latin America and other countries around the world from these, what we call them from my school of thought is that they are undefined left. I was telling Hugo that we have pretty much defined 7 types of lefts historically. And what we have now is this 6th version that is the undefined left. So undefined because they adhere to left values in a very populist but superficial way. So they have the speech, they are woke, they seem to care about, very ambiguous values like equality, which means fucking nothing. They are humanists, which has nothing to do with Marxism. And they're crypto-moralists, which is fucking insane. They're postmodern, is ridiculous. They still believe in the human being, which is redundant and over like we have gone over that notion. They are modern in their philosophical and ontological notion of the world, but they present nothing in terms of progressing the agenda of the proletariat, which is the most fundamental aspect of any leftist movement. That fundamental aspect they don't have.
Food for thought, though, and this is just for the conversation. Don't you think that this is directly engineered to be that way? That all the aesthetics are quote unquote right, all the non-controversial opinions are quote unquote right.
Yeah.
The correct opinions, I mean. But when it comes to the actual material basis of the ideology or the ideology that they propose or bring forth, there is no challenging of private property, no challenging of the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie, no challenging of the current relations of production. None of this stuff is
present,
even touched upon.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. I just don't know if I would agree, and this is because of my philosophical notions, that this notion that is manufactured. I struggle with this notion of freedom. Do you guys have a take on freedom? What do you think freedom is? Do you have a definition? Or do you believe we are free? What's your take on determinism versus freedom?
We're going to be here for the next couple hours. I'll give you a very quick, 2 sentences. I think in a very dialectical sense, that in the same way that you, in and of yourself, have an inherent nature that's not only emanates from within yourself, but also is formed by the underlying material conditions of the society and structures that you find yourself within. You have free choices. You have the freedom to make your choices, but within the constraints of the
material
environment
world.
around you. Exactly. So in general, I guess you're free to make your decisions and to think the way you think, but the limitations, of course, are structural,
right.
And they're outside of your control.
Right.
That's
The only true way to expand freedom is to expand the structure in which you exist, and then change the predetermined factors which influence your existence. That's indirectly, not by I'm changing something individual mine in my life, but
or
changes. Then the
just
predetermined
putting more American flags on things that will also increase freedom.
Of course.
So we're all Spinozists in our notion of freedom, because Spinoza's definition of freedom is that freedom is the subjective ignorance of the causes that limits us.
But that is the materialist view. And not to be the controversial, because I know Spinozists especially are incredibly pedantic with terms, but wouldn't it be appropriate to say that Spinoza was a kind of, I don't want to say a primitive materialist, but a form of...
Yeah.
He subscribed to a form of materialism.
Absolutely. He was
slightly vulgar, but...
The only difference... there's a lot of differences between Spinoza and Marx. But one thing one of the things that I think is bringing back Spinoza, which I find super interesting, is that Spinoza was a monist materialist. He's like a non-dialectical materialist. To be like that. That's the hard part. Like for me, and this is the same conversation that for me is the core conversation that we should be having on the left, because I think we should all agree, or we can agree at some point, that the enemy in some shape or form is idealism. Like
One-off, but yes.
One-off, but I think the left is at its weakest when it becomes idealistic, and most of our arguments.
You need to
go ahead.
No, I agree with your perspective partly, but the one thing that we need to realize, 2 things, of course, the Marxist maxim, that is, it's all good to have the philosophy. We can interpret the world, but again, the point is to change it.
Yeah.
That's number 1. But number 2, I think an all-out philosophical assault on what would be deemed as idealist, especially by for example, nascent left, or a left that isn't all that developed in and of itself, that becomes divorced from the conditions of everyday people. Like all these conversations are very good to have, and restructuring the left and bringing them back to number one, a social materialist outlook, particularly in the analysis of, like I'll bring the number one example and then I'll shut up. The number one example I like to use is that before Lenin brought forth his amazing analyses, and before Mao also brought forth his amazing analyses, both of them did a local study of the number one development of capitalism or development of semi-feudal relations within the regions that they were. So Lenin wrote on the development of capitalism in Russia, and also Mao wrote a similar work. The name of it skips my mind right now. That is inherently the first position we should take when we mean materialism. And I know that this is what you mean as well, or at least my assumption is. But the liberals and the walls are kicking very hard, so I need to.
No, I agree. I agree with what you're framing. It's exactly what we need to do. We need the material analysis of our conditions first, and then based on our material analysis, then we need to build our plans upon. So going back to the situation in Brazil, right? So I think that these neo-fascist or proto-fascist movements, reactionaries that we're seeing in Brazil. And I do want to point out there's a lot of similarities between fascism and what's happening in Brazil. I don't think it's quite big enough just to call them reactionaries or extreme right, because I do think there's a lot of seeds, especially from these 13 points from Umberto Eco, which are very helpful as an entry point guide to identify some of the aspects of fascism as an naturally dissolving ideology coming from liberalism
but it always evolves. So no, you're right. As a not beginners, but as an introductory explanation of what a fascist is, yes, Umberto is absolutely brilliant. But obviously, fascism is in constant motion, so there's ways to avoid the questions and still be a fascist. But apologies, please continue.
No, don't worry. So how we became to be like this? My explanation is a mix between the lack of capacity of the populist, undefined left to actually come up with a proper solution to the pains of the working class, and we can see it, and these evolving pains of the working class just dissolve, and getting tired of being proposed ideological solutions to material problems, which I think is my diagnosis of the incompetence of the political left in Latin America, providing ideological solutions to material problems. They got fed up with that, and they found a new flag to rally upon, and this is the reactionary proto-fascist right. And then what happened, punctually saying on January 8th in Brazil, is that different from America, is that in Brazil, Lula was already elected. Because in the US, Trump was still president. That was one of the key differences. For us, Lula was already elected, but Bolsonaro fled the country and went to Miami. He, just as most very coward politicians, he faked a medical condition to get admitted into a hospital. Of course, the hospital found nothing, and he got kicked out in 2 days. That was ridiculous. And it was even like very ideological, because he said that the problem was in his stomach. Like, he was literally shedding himself out of fear of going to jail.
Too much KFC.
Yeah, exactly. Material conditions provided ideological justifications. But then, of course, he was still connected with most of the WhatsApp fanatic groups and Facebook fake news and whatnot. And a lot of these was orchestrated. And now there's documents proving that some international banks and even BlackRock was funding the agribusiness in Brazil. And most of the money funding the strike on the Capitol on the 8th of January came from the agribusiness and indirectly from American banks and international banks through the agribusiness in Brazil. The other key difference between Brazil and the US is that in the US there was almost no repercussion. Yeah. Also, in a way, reflecting the relationship between these unrest and the bourgeois class. And in Brazil, 1,200 people went to jail.
Yeah, I saw this morning, I think, that it was something like 55 buses of Bolsonaro supporters were stopped. That's incredible to me, like hearing that and seeing what the response was in the US, which was pretty much nothing. It's shocking the difference that you can have in two very similar events.
Yeah, the relationship build up between this now new government of not even half a year, and obviously in Brazil, from what I know, at least a very, let's call it, independent military and police wing. It's kind of impressive to see that relationship has been established so quickly, and especially after such a long rule by Bolsonaro. But then again, we do not know what exactly in these deals for the support for the military and the police for Lula's government, what is being indirectly or directly transacted. Or it could be best case scenario, and even the pigs and the military don't fucking like these batshit insane fascists.
Yeah.
But you never know. But that kind of leads us into, you kind of already touched on the point, but I'll generalize the question. I guess. What does a principled, let's call it leftist, because Marxist, Spinoza, a principle that how do you feel about this very intense, let's call it left wave of mostly social democrats being elected into power all over Latin America? Do you think that is a net positive for the building of a proletarian society in South America in general, for the radicalization of Marxists, for the genuine principled Marxist movement, I guess? Or do you think that the cause and effect, the effect will just be, the further placating, as they say, of the masses who now, are going to get their little taps on the head, and they'll be happy, and radicalization is going to be slowed down up until just a new Bolsonaro pops up eventually.
Well, I think like most very good questions, they already presuppose half of the answer. So my take on your question is that I'm moderately scared, I will say. So my animosity is not net positive. Why? First, because I think, generally speaking, the discourse and more than that, the economical plans that these presidents are presenting. And when I say these presidents, I mean Lula, Boric, Petro, AMLO, so Colombia, Mexico, Brazil, even Argentina, you could say Chile. Their economic plans and their development plans are mostly neoliberal. And I think, just as the one that came before them, which were mostly left-leaning centrists, they were the ones that created the material conditions that gave rise to this neo-reactionary ideology. So my fear is that having a reading of these recurring events in history, they will not fix the problems that are actually causing pain to the working class. So, by failing to do so, they will only add gasoline to the fire and the hatred of the left, but also, which is now becoming more and more relevant, and I fucking hate it, it's a hatred toward centralized government. And now the conversation in Latin America is steering from left to right, is steering to the true heart of neoliberalism, which is government versus no government. And I think this is the one that becomes really scary for me, because we tend to think of history as a forward movement, but it can easily be towards a much worse situation than we are today. So
yo-yo.
Yeah, exactly. So when we say communism or barbarism, today it's an actual fear, because when I hear these conversations about decentralized and Web 3.0 and anarcho-capitalism and these like crazy ideas from Rothbard, von Mises and Hayek, people have no idea what they're talking about when they want smaller government. Like, especially at the level of fragility that we have now with big data, with big tech, like it can easily get out of route and into something as Elysium and one of those post-apocalyptic movies that we love to watch and just say, it's over dramatized, it's never gonna happen. Like that's what scares me.
Until it does, baby. Yeah.
It's scary. It's strange, but it's a reading that we should at least consider if we are serious about politics, that it can happen. Marxists should not be doing predictions. because new ideological superstructures only emerge as a result from changing material conditions. So what we should be very aware is how technology is shaping us, how technology is enabling new relationships of power, how relationships of production are changed by evolving, emerging, and changing hands of technology and other social conditions. So that's what should be really, let's say, in our radar to give this reading. So, and the other thing that is slightly concerning to me about the topics of conversation in the current Latin American left is one thing that really makes me shed my pants is when they talk about the Amazon. So we already had a speech from Petro from Colombia saying that they need the help from the US to control the drug cartels and to control the Amazon as one of the key nature reservoirs around the world. These type of topics make me like want to smash people against walls, because that's insane. Like if we have no sovereignty over our territories, then we can never aspire to something better. But the only caveat I will add is that, as Lenin said, it's much easier for us to fight for the proletariat cause from a social democracy than it is from authoritarian feudal capitalist society. So that's the only good caveat I will say. But we have to be very smart. Even if I don't believe in reformism, we have to be very smart and advance the cause as much as possible to improve the quality of life and the power of the proletariat class.
I will also throw in a caveat, because although it's true that it's easier to organize when in less like restrictive conditions, let's say, within most of the social democracy. And again, we discussed this earlier in earlier episodes. The material base of social democracy, for example, in Latin America, for example, let's say in Bolivia, compared to, for example, Norway, are fundamentally different.
Oh, yeah.
Norway gets it through unequal exchange, value transference, etc., etc. Meanwhile, Bolivia gets it through usually a form of accumulation from its nationalized resources.
Yeah.
But that being said, though, at the end of the day, when somebody, for example, in France might hear this, they need to understand that a new difficulty is brought up in the social democracies that benefit from imperialism, in that you end up with basically a certain segment of that ruling class, usually the ones who are in the trade unions and whatnot, being part of a labor aristocracy, and they benefit more from the overexploitation of the third world than basically class solidarity with the proletariat. So the point gets a lot more nuanced. Again, this is just the liberals kicking in the walls. Sorry, I cut you off. Go on.
No, it's perfect. And I think your explanation, Hakim, fits in perfectly with why Biden is supporting Lula and not Bolsonaro.
Yeah, which would lead me exactly to the next question. How is the West, from your perspective, reacting to this, however problematic, quote unquote, left wave all over South America? And in general, I think it would be very interesting for the viewers, and also for my Balkan ass and for his Iraqi ass and for his Yankee ass, just to is the West's influence over Central and South America as prominent as in the Cold War? Probably the answer is going to be no, but still. Is it well established as it was back then? Is it more direct, less direct? Because at one point it was very direct with you guys, like Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah.
Sorry for laughing. It was dark humor. It didn't mean to offend in any way. The relationship, not the relationship, how does the West impact the sovereignty of Central and Southern America, and also obviously different socialist movements or socialist ideology in general?
Just to be clear, when you mean the West, you mean the Anglo Empire?
Yeah. I mean the Yanks and the English, but the English no longer that relevant. But the
Anglo Empire.
JT's people. I'm fucking with Sorry. Those are not his people.
It's probably what we call NATO and the Anglo Empire, let's say. So I was not there on the 64, which was the last time the US was directly involved into a coup d'etat in Brazil. I was not there. I know there are more recent ones in other countries in Latin America, which I was happily not part of. But I can say that it's hard to respond to your question, because I think the way the Anglo Empire influences other countries around the world has drastically changed from when we were growing up. So it's hard for me to make a judgment to say if it's less or more. I will say it's just different. It's just different, but then again, a lot of things are different. Well, like, I will tell you what I will strive for and what I think is the topics of conversation that we should be having in Latin America. We probably need to take advantage of this moment where we are on a glimpse of a new multipolar world, and we need to choose our commercial partners wisely. First of all, I think Latin American countries need to invest heavily on productive forces, because this was destroyed in the last few decades, completely contrasting what happened in China, for example, that China heavily developed their productive forces, even like within all the compliments and critiques they should respond to. I think Latin America fell back. Like instead of developing, intellectual capital and productive forces, intelligence, innovation, and the proper STEAM sciences until a certain degree, and, productive forces based on the government and strong government entities and agencies, controlling petroleum, raw materials, being able to transform petroleum into actually fuels. Instead of doing that, what we did because of neoliberalism, which I think is the way that is more effective to influence the relationship of subordination between Latin America and the Anglo Empire, is that through neoliberalism, what they did is that they completely stopped our productive development, and they made us commodity dependent. And by making a country commodity dependent, and I think you can see, for example, the example of Venezuela and Cuba, when you don't have even let's say, a wide array of commodities you can export, and you depend on one commodity, you become super vulnerable. And I think what saved Brazil and other countries in Latin America is that at least they had more than one thing to export. So they had clients all over the world, which made them slightly less vulnerable. But even so, the vulnerability, it was made super clear. The fact that we were made, took advantage of because we had no option, because we had a single commercial partner. And this single commercial partner, even using the logic of the market, made us more vulnerable. And I think what we need to do for the next few decades is to regain our investment, heavy political and state investment into the development of intelligence, technology, innovation, productive forces, and at the same time develop commercial partnerships, especially with China. And this I'm going to be crystal clear. I think the Latin American countries will benefit heavily from developing a more strong, a wider number of different channels, different categories, different industries with China, and potentially even with India and other countries in BRIC, in order to break this unilateral dependence on the US and the Anglo Empire. Mexico is a very different story, because Mexico, as they say here in Mexico, is too far from God and too close to America.
I love that. I'm writing that down. Oh.
And it's true, because in a way Mexico is a type of economical stronghold in a very bad geographical position, where we share pretty much all of our northern borders and most of our territorial border with the US. And most of what we export goes to the US. So in the end, we depend on the prices they set and the conditions they set and what they ask for in return, and we're fucked. Right? But Brazil is different. I want to hope and I want to think that Brazil can really be the shining light into providing a new alternative for the left in Latin America as a leading country. Also understanding that the diplomatic school of Brazil, which is Itamaraty, is super strong with very qualified diplomats. And I hope that they can develop a progressive, economically progressive agenda and development-driven Marxist economists to actually develop the productive forces of Brazil, and then the rest of Latin America can use that those ports and all that beautiful maritime border to actually develop non-unilateral commercial relationships with other countries and regions.
A multipolar world will definitely change almost all the pieces on the chess table, at least from where they are positioned right now. And hopefully South America, just like many parts of the world, especially when it comes to mid-sized developing countries, manages to take as much advantage of that as possible. We know that even if we look at the Cold War, or even if we look at like pre-capitalist societies, arguably when multiple empires are at each other's throat, they can either be played into the hand of smaller countries, or they can be at least ignored. The smaller countries can at least be ignored to reestablish themselves in their own particular way. But
so if I may, there's one extra comment that I think is relevant to what you said.
Please do, yeah.
A lot of Marxist-Leninists in Brazil right now are talking about the dangers of the Balkanization of Brazil.
Yeah, well, there's a danger of balkanization everywhere. You should look at the Balkans as an example.
Yeah,
but
and
wonder
the
who
counter
used the word.
And the counter movement, which is very interesting, it's called Iberophonic bloc. So Iberophonic bloc will be a bloc built front of all the countries around the different countries around the world that speak Portuguese or Spanish, which are the only two languages in the world that share 99% commonalities and have the same type of being and doing verb structure, which is fundamental for human understanding. So these like Spanish and Portuguese are super, super common. And if we unite, all Latin America plus some countries in Africa, two countries in Asia and Spain, then we potentially have another bloc that can have a chip on the table and take advantage of this new non-monopolistic new view of the world.
Of course. Unification is always preferable as long as, we all know this, but as Hakim calls them, the liberal and the wall is talking, as long as, the biggest player in the given federation doesn't suppress the cultural identities of all the others. Line and then whatever is, I think, almost 99% of the time a great the kind of direction for all of the world's continents to go into, and eventually, like this, we can only dream, but the planet is actually united at some point. But I think we'll need aliens to all unite against, because otherwise we will see too many differences in each other. I don't actually believe that. I know it's a cliche point to make. I absolutely do not believe that. We definitely see more similarity in each other than difference, but we are materially, because of the material conditions, we are pushed into hating each other in order to not concentrate on their actual similarities, because then we would notice who the actual enemy is, and that is almost always in the form of class. Like, this is 101 shit. We had whole episodes about this. I apologize to the listeners.
No.
Or the new ones, refer to previous episodes. But this is a completely just from me question, a very quick one. And it might be a bit stereotypical to ask somebody from South America, but I don't care. I really wanted to ask it. What is the relationship between arguably the most powerful criminal organizations on the planet, which exist exactly in South America, which are commonly called cartels, but it's a bit more complex than that? What is their relationship with big capital, with government, with the way South America is run in general?
I thought you were going to say banks when you said like the biggest cartels.
Banks as well, yeah, banks as well. Why not?
I think,
arguably I can respect the cartel more because at least they're honest with chopping heads off. The bank, pretends it's shaking your hand.
So I think in the end, I think even drugs, there's exploitation of labor directly. And I think it's kind of hard because you have to make like an abstract concept of what is the meaning of cartels in order to judge it and to justify its existence or to moralize
what the legal bourgeoisie defined as the illegal bourgeoisie.
Exactly.
So how does the illegal bourgeoisie, how does it work together with the legal bourgeoisie? Is there direct conflict between them? It's just interesting because arguably, this sounds like very dehumanizing, but South America, certain parts of it, for example, especially Colombia and especially certain parts of Mexico, are kind of this massive experiment where we as Marxists can actually see the illegal bourgeois and the legal bourgeois and how they interact, and when they work together, and when very interestingly they work very much against each other, and why that comes to be, and when it changes, and then when it comes to be again, etc., etc.
So for I don't know if it well, let me make the analysis which I think will add most value to the conversation, like beyond the traditional points. In a way, the way politics work, I'm going to talk about Latin America that I know the most, but I think a lot of these aspects will apply to other regions as well, is that there's no corruption in the US because financial lobby is legal, right? Because if there was no legalized financial lobbying in the US, it would be completely corrupt. The government is overflown with private investment and private money. So private money plays as an, let's say, it's this notion of, let's say, in anarcho-capitalism, if you keep some type of democratic structure, instead of having one person, one vote, you will have $1, one vote. So in Latin America, the relationship between our life and the drug business, beyond the demand and consumption and how it ends up being a solution for alienation and people just like end up killing themselves in drugs because of other material facts that led them there. I think that the cool analysis to do here is to think of them as another category of industry.
Yeah.
And the fact is that they have a lot of money to influence politics. And in the end, they are a huge player when it comes to politics, a huge, huge player. So they do help define who is going to lead and how they're going to lead and how much business they're allowed to keep on doing versus how much money they can inject back into politics. So having said that, I don't think it's different. It's not fundamentally different from any other industry in the sense that, and it's strange because I was there in Brazil during the last World Cup, when the meat industry from Brazil, which is huge, absolutely monstrous, is actually super big in the US as well, the same Brazilian companies, JBS, Marfrig, and Swift, like that, they were injecting like millions of dollars into the government in exchange for conditions that will make their operations easier. Like super simple example. It costed, and this was actually calculated, it was advertised within CEOs and politicians. For you to change a law, it will cost you 1% of the money you will make out of changing that law.
Ha!
Yeah. So it was.
I wish I was surprised. Surprised.
Yeah,
And I
but
can hear the boys not reacting. But,
Yeah.
this should like super blow your mind, right?
Well, this
Like,
is the
for
US, my
normie,
friend.
this should be like, what the fuck? But there's a bigger return?
Yeah.
The
you see,
politicians are cheaper
you see
or down
the-
south?
So this is the type of systematic philosophical analysis that I like to do of capitalism as an internal logical system that is always acting behind what we understand as human free will and end up manifesting into the result of our actual society. So you see, let's say you're a meat producing company and you say, you know what, my meat doesn't rot after 6 months. It actually rots at 7 months. So do you mind changing the shelf life of meat from 6 to 7 months? Because that will make me save a lot of money on meat that I'm throwing away because of overproduction, right? So yeah, the government will say, okay, so how much money would you make out of that change? I don't know, $100 million per month. Okay, perfect. So you pay me 1% of that, and I'm gonna change the law. That's how it works. So with the drug cartels are the same. So what are the type of changes, structural changes that I need in order to increase profitability of my business, and how much money can I give back to the government in order to make sure that those conditions are appropriate to my operations?
In a weird way, this is like, I know you touched on this as well, but I think the reason that I can't speak for JT, but I will. For both of us, I think the reason we're so unimpressed by this is if you've been on the left long enough, you realize that that's just business as usual, even quote unquote legal bourgeois governments, exactly as you mentioned. But the thing is that in legal bourgeois governments, or within the bounds of legality of bourgeois governments, these are even way more transparent, these forms.
Exactly.
In a way that becomes like it's flagrant, the absolute like, again, not to use the terms, but this is the terms that Marx gave us that make sense in or at least Lenin popularized, the how flagrant they exercise the dictatorship of their class over us. To the point that they don't even feel the need to pretend to try to legitimize themselves in their democracy, quote unquote democracy, in the economic sphere, etc., etc. And this is kind of a laziness that I've began to notice a lot more with the EU specifically, as well as with the United States, like as the shining example. Because I remember 15 years ago. With the the Iraq War was it's picking up in the worst aspects basically, and they still tried to do the nonsense. They still tried to make themselves to legitimize themselves in what they were doing. But now it's like, for example, like a couple of months ago, as always, they loaded up old Joe, Big Boy Joe, with all the amphetamines and God knows what that he needed. And he gave a speech about freedom in Cuba and all that kind of nonsense. And just a few weeks ago, there is basically a rule of refusal of Cuban refugees at the southern U.S. border, along with Mexicans and Guatemalans and other Central Asian people.
Not Ukrainians.
No. Ukrainians can't come, but American weapons funded by JT's tax money can go over. JT, your electrical grid can fail at any moment. It's teetering on a nice
I'm
stage.
ready. I've got my flashlights and my emergency wood for a fire in the middle of my living room.
But it's for your own good.
Just flash the Ukrainian flag you have on your wall. It's going to illuminate the room.
That's insane.
Exactly. Do you know why it's going to illuminate? It's because it's going to glow from all the fucking CIA bots. Fucking AstroTurf the entire. I'm sorry. Anyway, sorry. I just want to interject there. Please.
No, that's perfect. So in the end, like I use this point of the drug cartel just to remind people that even if we have these almost arbitrary division between legal and non-legal industries, the definition of legal and non-legal is a bourgeois definition. So we should also be very, very skeptic of the definition of what is legal and non-legal, and just using the paradox of the legality of some industries, even if they produce more harm and more like death. If you judge the amount of death produced by the pharmaceutical industry or the chemical industries versus the amount of death produced by the drug cartels, it's nothing. They're amateurs.
Yeah, minuscule.
The drug cartels are fucking amateurs. Like if you talk to Ronald McDonald, he's the biggest capo killer of the whole world. He's like, you clowns, you have no idea how to be effective at killing. You know how many people, Mexico is number 1 in child obesity and child diabetes. And it's a developing country, for Christ's sakes.
I'm imagining Ronald McDonald like in Russian mafia tattoos, like walking up.
Yeah.
Hey, little boy, eat this burger. It's good for you.
Those are amateur numbers.
Or saying, or Ronald McDonald say, "Hey, essay, what you doing?" With a fucking knife running at him.
Exactly.
With that shirt, that long, oh Lord.
Oh yeah. What's it called? The plaid shirt that's only buttoned at the top button. I don't know if this is a stereotype or not.
Yeah,
I'm not American. I wouldn't know.
From GTA and using the paradox of legality to talk the same thing that is happening in the US. Like it didn't impress you guys because in the US it's considered as legal. So we take those normative terms as hegemonic, like as naturalized, as always existing, as a perfect reflection of how reality should work, and they're not. It's insane that because lobbying. Go ahead. No, my rant is over. It was just repeating myself.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say, to expand on this also, a point of interest, I think, is this is not so much a capitalism critique. This is just a humans being humans type of thing. But everybody born in whatever time always thinks that the system that they currently live under, the hegemony that they currently live under, is basically just how it's always been. And capitalism has kind of encapsulated this in the individualist form, and as a result, the way that people consider what, the concept of a republic, especially in the modern sense, what quote unquote democracy is and how it's practiced, relations between countries, etc., including also these sort of like the illegality versus illegality and how it's defined by basically along the terms that the bourgeoisie defined as such, at least. All of this falls underneath this encampment, or not encampment, sorry, this tent of modern hegemony. But at the end of the day, just the point is that just because it's been like this your whole life, and possibly your parents' lives and your grandparents' lives, doesn't mean that this is just number one, how it's always been, number two, how it will always be. And this is kind of the first step in breaking I think the ideology of capitalism, and we can speak on this point forever, especially when in fields of organizing and whatnot. But that's just the point I want to make.
No, perfectly. I agree 100%. And it's crazy because if you think about it like that, we already live in a type of anarcho-capitalism. Because it's insane. I've had this idea like hunting my mind for a couple of months now. We already live in anarcho-capitalism. It's insane. Like after you read von Mises and Rothbard and Hayek, and you think, okay, so the market is the only true regulatory force. Yeah, well, Yeah, pretty much it is. I mean, pretty much it is. Why? Because
No, but hey, you need to make sure that the milk that 3-year-olds get isn't filled with cryptococcus, okay, with bird droppings, and as a result,
I love,
there's no freedom.
I love anarcho-capitalist jokes like von Mises, Hayek, and Rothbard walk into a bar. They order a beer, and the three of them die because the alcohol is adulterated.
Exactly.
It's crazy, but still, like I think like we're alive. Like we haven't gone to that extreme angle of anarcho-capitalism with nothing is regulated because they still need human labor. That's it. That's the only reason we're alive. Like me and Hugo were joking the other day about the future AI proletariat being the next emancipatory class. It's crazy. It's crazy. But, like you can even talk about abortion as a purely productive public policy. It's not moral at all. Like we dress it up as moral, but it's not a moral argument. It's purely a matter of productive forces. Like, do you need more hand labor or not? And then abortion makes sense or it doesn't make sense. But it's purely productive. Like I do believe we dress it up as what we want people to swallow the hard pill because the decision was already made based on a financial analysis. Or even a financial, or even as a financial logic that operates through us, like going across us, but like beyond our capacity to understand it or act against it.
If the market is the only regulatory force, and for example, if we use the US as an example, and the United States government can legally accept lobby money to change its policies, to change its outlook, to change what it votes for, etc., then indirectly, the market, meaning the people that have more dollars, vote through their dollars instead of the people on the actual ballot box. So indirectly, the anarcho-capitalist idea of, one vote equals $1 from the perspective of the lobbyist, which is the biggest players in the market, indirectly, quite literally, can control almost all regulations which happen in the United States. And as you said, the only reason why, we need to say that in the milk there's no bird shit is because for now they need to sell the milk. Obviously, still the market operates on a basis of some relative supply and demand, so they need to sell in order to generate profit. But as we know, that can be overturned at one point when they fucking feed us with bird topics for some reason.
No, and my fear is that in a way they already know it. The fact that Elon Musk is talking about UBI and you have like all these dumb politicians talking about universal basic income is because they need consumers still, because production forces are not fully automated. They're willing to go to the end where they give us starving wages as a universal basic income and keep us literally alive just to be able to produce and consume. As they amass surplus value, as Mark analyzed, and keep developing their hegemonical forces and their power and their dominance over us. But I think they already know. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I think Second Thought is the one that did a video on this. Isn't the approval rating on background checks on guns in America like an overwhelming majority? Even on the left and on the right, like fake left and fake right. But the approval rating is above 80% in America. But then again, it will never happen because the dollar votes behind the NRA are larger than the human votes on democracy. So we're already in an anarcho-capitalist utopia.
That's a great book idea. There you go. We already live in anarcho-capitalism. But you just shared it with like 100,000 people. So get to writing it. Otherwise, the market will privatize it immediately.
No, but knowing it doesn't change anything. Remember, I'm a non-dialectical Marxist.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Okay. We will definitely have these conversations again and again. Probably on your shows, on our shows, because already the what's the word? What's the English word? Already the charisma is very, very felt. But in order, to save some of your time, because you've been here already for 1 hour and a half already, let's wrap up the same way I guess we started. Leftist propaganda. So do you see us as just an extension of consumerism where, we wrap up our ideological beliefs into an easy to digest package for the alienated masses? Or do we actually serve a revolutionary purpose? Is doing this really doing something, or are we just another form of escapism? Maybe, I don't know, a combination of both. What do you think about us bread tubers?
I think
No, no.
yeah, I think it depends. It depends more on who's listening than us, because I don't think the message or the things that we say and the topics we discuss, they are received hegemonically over our viewers. Like I think what I have learned over the past few years producing content and having these conversations with several different levels of expertise and even levels of interest, where like I will go to syndicates and I will go to worker co-ops and have conversations with people, and I think the level of interest varies. And then, the traditional response will be to say, well, they're alienated, you need to help them understand and overcome alienation, right? And that's where I fear that we can become over ideological, even as Marxists. Like saying, no, it's a matter of me convincing you that there's something in your world that needs to change, versus saying, well, is there something in his material reality that is enabling him to actually understand? And then I'll tell you guys a little bit about my future projects. Like I just did a huge project around soccer around the world, which was soccer as a platform for subaltern groups to get their message out. So I took advantage of the World Cup and the fact that everybody was talking about the World Cup, and I traveled to 26 different countries around the world, and I recorded stories from soccer from very, very marginated communities, and like Down syndrome kids and LGBTs and victims of family violence in Africa, and illegal players that were fishermen, and like several very, very cool stories.
cool.
But my next project, it's about food. Is how food is probably the biggest social engineering project, unintended, that is perpetuating ideology. Because
How the Cheeto KFC collaboration is the most revolutionary project of the modern day.
Well,
Sorry.
well, yes, it is. Because if you eat a KFC Cheetos, you're gonna get chronic inflammation, and chronic inflammation is gonna make you dumb enough so that you're never gonna be able to understand that you're ideologically alienated from the fruit of your labor.
The glycemic peak is going to keep you alienated.
Yeah.
You know what? There's a thesis there.
Yeah, no, I'm not joking. The proliferation.
No, I get you.
The proliferation of corn in America and our consumption of corn is keeping us very, very stupid.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the point. I think it would be part of a much wider, multifaceted analysis, which you've already kind of touched on. But no, there definitely could be something there. But I was going to say about the project that you did, the first one you spoke of, incredibly reactionary project, because you called it soccer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, yes.
I was like, we're three non-Americans here.
Oh,
so
no.
call it what it's called.
No,
It's
football. Yeah, I'm gonna commit harakiri now. Yeah.
I'm
I'm gonna commit harakiri now.
Deservedly. No, I'm kidding. Just
I'll send you my
spit on the
pinky
next
finger.
American flag you see.
Don't worry.
Yeah.
I have one as a carpet in my office.
Waste.
Oh man, see, beautiful.
Oh Lord.
I wish I could, but I don't want to set my house on fire. Okay, no, but I'm sorry.
Isn't like in Iraq like all of toilet paper, like all of the recycled American flags? From
I
when they
wish,
ran
I
away,
wish,
yeah,
I
yeah.
wish.
And now
I
you can
wish.
import some from
that's showing it
Afghanistan.
more
no?
respect than it deserves, honestly.
Instead of toilet paper, I have a bunch of Ayn Rand books.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Honestly.
it's okay. Look, we don't use American flags as toilet paper. We use American flags to wrap the soldiers that come here and end up dying.
Oh my God! That's
I don't know.
and they
I
call
don't know
me
if that
the
would-
one with the fucking harsh jokes in this show. Wow!
I mean, I wish
Wow.
it's a joke. I wish it was
Hats
a
off,
joke.
hats off.
Aren't we
Hats
gonna
off.
hang them with
Anyways.
the rope that they sell to us? So
That too. But that's not for Americans. That's specific.
That's
or
gonna be
American soldiers
international.
specifically.
Yeah, that's-
that
yeah,
picks no
that's global.
nation.
Anyways, Yugovny, please lead us into the promised land of the of the sign off.
Before we sign off, Diego, would you already plug the incredible project that you worked on, the one that you're working on right now, but also tell please the audience where they could find more information about those projects, where they could find more information about your work on the daily, and obviously all those links will be available in the
Thank you so much.
description, info box, whatever platform you're listening on. for some reason call this shit differently. So please, Diego, tell the audience where they can find you.
So first of all, I would like to reinstate my happiness of being here and having the joy of having a conversation with the three of you. And it was really, really a pleasure and an honor for me to share space with you guys. I'm a big fan. I want to reinstate that so people remember. In some ways, I was inspired by the work you were doing, because I think you were producing content before me, and I was heavily inspired by your work. So if there's a testament to our power as a group, even if we're in a different regions around the world, I can say that whatever I'm doing, it's partially and indirectly influenced by the work that you guys were doing first. Having said that, you guys can find me at Diego Ruzzarin. I'm happy enough to have a weird last name, so the handles were not taken anywhere. So I mean, the same name is in pretty much every platform. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and I think those are it. Actually, TikTok as well, even if I don't manage them all directly. I have a very cool team that helps me clip and distribute my content all over the platforms. But you can pretty much find me as Diego Ruzzarin everywhere and listen about my projects, my conferences. I've published 2 books lately. If you guys are interested in that, I can send you copies as well. I have some very cool aesthetic t-shirts, even if Jopoknik is not a big fan. If you like to wear comfy clothes, I'm pretty sure you're going to find some cool Evangelion and anime themed Marxist t-shirts.
Very cool. Okay, thank you very much, Diego. Thank you very much, Hakeem JT. I think this was a brilliant episode. Thank you for tuning in. Especially thank you to all of our patrons, without whom this show would never be able to run. In case you would like to support the show, check out the Patreon link in the description. For basically the price of a can of beer a month, you can help the show run, get early episodes, get completely exclusive bonus episodes, or join our Patreon Discord. With that being said, Diego, this is how we do the sign off every time.
And this has been, I mean, are we signing off? Fuck.
Yeah. No, yes.
This is it. This has been the Deprogram. I'm Hakeem.
I'm JT.
I'm Ugopnik.
And I'm Diego Ruzzarin.
Hey.
Based.
You got Nick, say something. Say something.
Ah,
do
what?
You got to do a quip.
The pajamas are for. Come on, I don't have a quip.